Rawteur. In 1978, 20th Century Fox and Lucasfilm sued MCA, claiming Battlestar Galactica wasn't just inspired by Star Wars, it was stealing from it. But if you're familiar with this case, then you actually only know about the 13 examples of alleged copying that are easy to find online. Therefore, if you want to know about the other 21 claims of copyright infringement in this case, claims that no one else has uncovered until now, then stick around because we're breaking it all down. Using the official court documents as a guide, we'll take a look at side-by-side comparisons of the ideas, designs, and even entire scenes that 20th Century Fox and Lucasfilm claimed were stolen from them. But not all claims are created equal. Therefore, we'll start with the weakest examples and build up to the most compelling evidence. Allegation number 1. Each work is set in a distant galaxy. Our first claim might seem obvious. Both stories take place in galaxies far beyond Earth. The question is, does describing a remote galaxy amount to a unique expression or just a common sci-fi device?
It's impossible. How will the Emperor maintain control without the bureaucracy?
The regional governors now have direct control over their territories. Fear will keep the local systems in line. Fear of this battle station.
As we look at this scene from A New Hope, we see Grand Moff Tarkin and other officers standing around the conference table on the Death Star. They're talking about keeping local systems in line through fear, clearly indicating the Empire rules a vast region of space. When you think about it, this firmly places Star Wars in a completely separate galaxy, far removed from Earth.
Not merely as the Quorum of 12, representing the 12 colonies of man, but as my friends, the greatest leaders ever assembled. As we approach the 7th millennium of time, the human race at last will find peace.
In the pilot episode of Battlestar Galactica, the Colonial Council debates recent attacks by the Cylons and references the 12 colonies of man. This exchange establishes that humanity here spans multiple star systems, each one forming part of a distant civilization, not connected to modern-day Earth. On the left is the Imperial Strategy briefing from Star Wars, while on the right is the Colonial Council meeting from Battlestar Galactica. Both scenes reinforce a large-scale interplanetary backdrop, something any space opera fan would recognize. Yes, it's definitely sci-fi, but it's hardly unique to these two franchises. That's why this allegation is considered weak. Saying we're in a galaxy far away is a staple of the genre, not some exclusive concept. One critical allegation that isn't up for debate: you forgot to hit the like button. But don't worry, you can fix that right now. Allegation number 20. Each ends with an award ceremony for the heroic pilots. At its core, Star Wars is the rebellion versus the Empire, and Battlestar Galactica is the Colonials versus the Cylons. Both show a struggle between freedom and tyranny. Let's look at how each story sets up that clash.
I have placed information vital to the survival of the rebellion into the memory systems of this R2 unit. My father will know how to retrieve it. You must see this droid safely delivered to him on Alderaan. This is our most desperate hour. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
In A New Hope, right around the time R2-D2 replays Leia's message for Obi-Wan Kenobi, she calls our most desperate hour. She's begging Obi-Wan to help, underscoring just how oppressive the Empire has become. It's classic good versus evil, the rebellion fighting for democracy against authoritarian rule.
Forgive me, Mr. President, but they hate us with every fiber of their existence. We love freedom, we love independence, to feel, to question, to resist oppression. To them, it's an alien way of existing they will never accept.
In the pilot episode Saga of a Star World, Commander Adama warns the president that the Cylons are not interested in peace, only the complete eradication of the human race. By doing so, they'll snuff out the colonials' free society. It's a clear parallel to Leia's plea. We have a group defending democratic values against a merciless, mechanized threat. Star Wars shows a hidden rebellion fighting back against a massive empire, while Battlestar Galactica depicts a last stand fleet fleeing from genocide. Both revolve around survival and freedom versus tyranny, a time-tested theme across sci-fi and fantasy. Rebels versus an evil empire is a standard formula in space opera. The court didn't see anything particularly original there, so moving on. Allegation number 2. Each work uses a time twist, as in, it's assumed to be the future, but it's actually a distant past. The lawsuit claims both stories might fool audiences into thinking they're futuristic, when, in fact, each suggests it's happening in the distant past. Let's see how that's conveyed without referencing the iconic opening text scroll in Star Wars, because we're saving that for a little bit later.
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. Before the Dark Times. Before the Empire.
In this moment, Obi-Wan is training Luke aboard the Millennium Falcon. His mention of Jedi Knights thriving for thousands of generations implies a very ancient order. It suggests the story might actually be looking back on a lost golden age, rather than depicting a future timeline.
Our recorded history tells us that we descended from a mother civilization, a race that went out into space to establish colonies. In a galaxy very much like our own, on a planet called Earth.
In the extended pilot of Battlestar Galactica, Commander Adama explains that Earth is just a legend, supposedly settled centuries ago by colonists who left the 12 colonies. This twist means the series actually predates what we think of as present-day Earth, even though the tech looks futuristic. On the left, Obi-Wan reminiscing about a centuries-old Jedi tradition. On the right, Adama pointing to Earth as an almost mythical homeland. Both scenes undermine the assumption that these are futuristic sagas, indicating a deep past that predates our history. It's a fun twist, but not groundbreaking. Many sci-fi stories play with the idea that advanced civilizations came before us. Let's continue. Allegation number 26. The totalitarian forces use masked uniform stormtroopers. Next, we examine each series' rank-and-file soldiers. Is there really a striking similarity between Star Wars' stormtroopers and the Cylons? Here, in the opening battle aboard the Tantive IV, an entire squad of stormtroopers in pristine white armor blast their way in. They're faceless and interchangeable, serving as the iron fist of the Empire. This visual immediately became iconic.
Long-range scan indicates unknown craft approaching. Alert the gun crews.
In the Gun on Ice Planet Zero, we see Centurion foot soldiers patrolling an icy outpost. They have reflective metal bodies, identical helmets, and a unified robotic voice that underscores their total loyalty to the Cylon cause. Much like stormtroopers, these Centurions are a homogeneous army. On one side, the white-shelled stormtroopers of the Empire. On the other, silver-armored Centurions marching in unison. Both sets of shock troops project an intimidating collective persona. But this kind of masked, uniformed force predates both series. Think of pulp sci-fi or even medieval knights in identical helmets. The court saw these as standard tropes, an enforcement squad who hide their faces. Let's keep going. Allegation number 32. The totalitarian forces are referred to as the Empire. This one's straightforward. Star Wars uses the actual name, Empire, while Battlestar Galactica occasionally calls the Cylons Dominion and Empire. Does it matter though?
An Imperial probe droid.
It's a good bet the Empire knows we're here.
We better start the evacuation.
In these early moments on Hoth, we hear the rebels alert each other about an Imperial probe droid. The term Imperial drives home that Palpatine's regime is officially called the Empire, leaving no ambiguity.
To serve the Empire!
I think I can assure you, with some sense of pride, you will inherit the most capable Centurions in all the Empire.
In this scene, Rawteur specifically refers to the Cylons as an empire. While the show usually says Cylons or Cylon Alliance, this line parallels Star Wars terminology, an empire bent on expansion and dominance. On the left, we see Imperial officers in Empire Strikes Back, while on the right, Lucifer pledges his loyalty after being spared. Empire is an ancient term describing any vast authoritarian state, so it's not surprising both series used it. In the eyes of the court, calling your evil regime an empire is just too generic to be protected. Onward. Allegation number 23. A scene in a cantina, Star Wars, or casino, Galactica, with bizarre, non-human creatures. We all know the Mos Eisley Cantina scene from Star Wars. Battlestar Galactica similarly showcases an exotic gambling hall. Battlestar Galactica similarly showcases an exotic gambling hall. Let's see how they compare. In A New Hope, Luke and C-3PO step into this smoky bar filled with creatures of every shape and size. The band plays that exotic blend of jazz and swing music, setting the tone for a universe brimming with diverse life. It's a defining moment that showed moviegoers how vast the galaxy really was.
No, but then I've never been here before either.
In the Battlestar Galactica pilot, Starbuck and Lieutenant Boomer find themselves on a frontier settlement where a raucous gambling hall is packed with off-world traders. Several alien-like figures make cameos, highlighting that humans aren't alone in this universe. This mirrors the kind of variety we saw in Star Wars' cantina scene. On the left, the cramped, noisy cantina teeming with alien species in Star Wars. On the right, the Galactica team mingling with assorted non-humans at a casino. Both aim to convey that sense of a larger galaxy, but it's a well-established trope in science fiction. It's an effective way to show interspecies diversity, but hardly new. Next, allegation number 25. Spacecraft engage in aerial dogfights, World War II style. George Lucas famously cited World War II footage when crafting the X-Wing versus the fighters battles. Galactica also features fighter squadrons in formation. Let's break it down.
Look at the size of that thing. Cut the shot on Red 2. Accelerate to attack speed. I'm going in. Cover me, Porkins.
In this scene, the rebels attack the Death Star, diving and weaving, much like Spitfires versus Messerschmitts in classic war movies. The radio chatter, "I'm going in, cover me," reinforces that dogfight feel.
Hang on.
Over on Galactica, the Colonial Vipers launch in squads, peeling off to flank Cylon raiders. The cinematography, with quick pans and close-ups of pilots, mimic older war flicks. It's a similar approach, evoke the tension of aerial combat, but in outer space. On the left, X-Wings racing down the trench. On the right, Vipers bank and roll, evading laser fire from Cylon ships. Both pay homage to World War II aerial battles, and again, this style dates back to Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, and more. It's an iconic approach, but not exclusive. Let's look at the next claim. Allegation number 27. A fear the heroes will be sent to spice mines or other harsh mines. Here, the lawsuit points to forced labor mines threatened against the protagonists in both series. Let's see if that's special or just another adventure trope.
If it's a fast ship.
Fast ship? You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Should I have?
It's a ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
In the Mos Eisley Cantina negotiation scene, Han brags about making the Kessel run in under 12 parsecs. Kessel is notorious for its spice mines, a place of brutal forced labor in Star Wars lore. Getting shipped off to Kessel is basically a nightmare sentence.
We are prisoners. Our fathers were prisoners. Our mothers were prisoners. It is the way of the universe.
But what about your children?
Oh, they were contributors we have, making ambrosia for the colonial warriors.
The colonies long ago forgot these penal asteroids even exist.
In this scene, Starbuck tries to convince some prisoners on the asteroid that they no longer need to produce ambrosia for the colonial military. This is the closest reference to forced labor I could find in Battlestar Galactica. On one side is Han Solo's offhand mention of the dreaded spice mines of Kessel. On the other, Starbuck trying to talk some sense into prisoners on the asteroid planet. The idea of forced mining, though not specifically referenced in either scene, is common in pulpy sci-fi. Think of the infamous Mongol mines from Flash Gordon. Court saw this as another generic peril. Moving on. Allegation number 29. Major characters have to cross a precarious bridge or precipice while pursued by enemies. Now we get into classic action flick territory. A narrow walkway, laser blast, and a leap of faith. Let's compare each version. This is the memorable Death Star bridge scene. Luke shoots the controls and they're stuck on the ledge. Under a hail of blaster fire, he uses a grappling hook to swing Leia to safety. It's a perfect Indiana Jones style moment, though this predates Indiana Jones.
Captain, where you guys been? We've been looking all over for you.
In this scene, the Galactica crew narrowly escape the Cylons as they cross a bridge under heavy fire. The tension is the same, the enemies are closing in, and there's a nearby fatal drop. Left, Luke and Leia at the Death Star chasm. On the right, the Galactica crew barely make an escape. Both scenes rely on that nail-biting scenario of a perilous gap under fire. However, this has been a mainstay in adventure cinema for decades. The court found it to be a generic set piece, exciting, but not unique. Allegation number 30. Major characters fall into a long shaft during their escape.
No, I am your father. Come with me. It is the only way.
Hey everyone, Future Me here. Somehow this one ended up in the middle, but honestly it should have been at the very beginning. I couldn't find a comparative scene in Battlestar Galactica that matches this claim. And at this point, I'm starting to think that Universal might have just made this one up. Anyway, let's move on to number 31. Allegation number 31, a device used to sense the presence of life forms. Both franchises use gadgets that detect living beings. Is that too specific or just standard sci-fi tech?
Get me a scanning crew in here on the double. I want every part of this ship checked.
It's all yours. Anything reported immediately.
As we see in A New Hope, Imperial soldiers board the captured Millennium Falcon with a device used to scan for life forms.
Something's wrong with my scanner. I can't get any reading.
In this scene from the episode War of the Gods Part 1, Starbuck, Apollo, and Sheba use a handheld scanner to search for life signs near a crashed ship. When they attempt to scan Count Iblis, the device fails to register him, raising suspicion about his true nature. Star Wars showcases an Imperial scanning device, while Galactica uses a handheld scanner. Both fulfill that same function, spotting life in an unknown environment. It's comparable to the tricorder in Star Trek. Nothing revolutionary. Allegation number 33. Battlestar in the title is in essence Star Wars reversed. Here's the argument. If you flip Star Wars, you get War Star. And since that's a little too obvious, war becomes battle, turning it into Battlestar. It's a bit of a stretch, but that's the claim. Battlestar is generic enough not to be trademark infringement. Next, allegation number 34. In a galaxy far, far away versus the word Galactica. Finally, we have the famous tagline, in a galaxy far, far away. And the lawsuits claim that naming the series Galactica is essentially copying that phrase. Everyone recognizes this line, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's arguably the most famous intro text in movie history, giving Star Wars a kind of storybook feel. In Battlestar Galactica, the ship itself is Galactica, a nod to the galaxy it traverses. The lawsuit insists this is echoing the same idea, namely that everything is set in a faraway galaxy. Both evoke large-scale space adventures, but words like galaxy or galactic are so basic to sci-fi that the judge found it too generic. Let's take a look at some of the claims that have a bit more specificity. Allegation number 28. Red leader to blue leader style radio chatter in space combat. This one focuses on how each series handles radio calls during fighter battles, color-coded call signs reminiscent of real aviation.
Gold 5 to red leader. Lost Tyree, lost touch. I copy, Gold leader. This is red 5. I'm going in.
In the final assault on the Death Star, we hear pilots identify themselves as Red Leader or Red 5. George Lucas lifted this from World War II movies, where squadrons use similar calls to coordinate attacks.
Blue Squadron, let's show the fleet how a launch is done. Blue Squadron leader launching.
Blue Squadron, let's go join the party.
Blue Squadron patrol, disengage your attack.
This parallels the way X-Wings communicate, giving in to that same military feel. On the left, the Rebels' Red Leader coordinating the trench run. On the right, Galactica squadrons exchanging color-based callouts. It's certainly similar, but again, it's directly inspired by real fighter pilot protocol rather than a unique Star Wars invention. Allegation number 5. The young hero's close friend is a cynical, hotshot fighter pilot with a heart of gold. In Star Wars, that's Han Solo. Over in Galactica, Starbuck fills the same niche. Let's see the clips.
Well, that's the real trick, isn't it? And it's gonna cost you something extra. Come on.
Here, Han is negotiating his fee with Luke and Obi-Wan, playing the rogue smuggler who only wants money. Yet, moments later, we see him risk his life to help Luke and Leia, revealing the conscience underneath his bravado.
Well, money isn't everything. Listen, have you checked out the accommodations yet?
If we don't stop them, we're gonna have to go back and live on that rock.
Starbuck flirts, cracks jokes, and acts like he's in it for fun. But when the Cylons attack or his friends are in danger, he's the first to jump into the cockpit and fight. It mirrors Han's transformation from self-serving loner to loyal companion. On the left, Han is being a shrewd negotiator, and on the right, Starbuck is scheduling some extracurriculars. Both are classic examples of the lovable rogue with a heart of gold, rooted in westerns and war movies long before Star Wars. Allegation number 9. A close family member of the young hero is killed, galvanizing him to fight. One of the oldest motivations in storytelling, tragedy pushes our hero into action. When Luke sees the homestead in flames and his aunt and uncle's remains, it's a devastating moment that propels him to join Obi-Wan on the path to becoming a Jedi and facing the Empire.
I had to leave Zach. He's disabled. I'd like to go back and lead him in. It won't be possible. Father, I didn't know what else to do. If I don't go back, he doesn't stand a chance. Zach?
His ship was destroyed just short of the fleet.
In this episode, Apollo gets personal news that someone close to him was a casualty of the recent Cylon onslaught. That tragedy cements his resolve to protect the fleet and avenge his loss. Left, Luke's horror at his burned homestead. Right, Apollo's shock upon hearing the casualty report. In both, personal grief becomes the hero's primary catalyst to fight back, a standard dramatic device across genres. Next, allegation number 12. A leading character returns home to find it destroyed. In both stories, a hero comes back to a place that once felt safe, only to see it in ruins. This is the same scene as before, but focusing on Luke's homestead itself. He's forced to confront the burned skeletons of his old life. It's a stark, haunting image.
Mr. President, a wall of unidentified craft is closing in on the fleet.
Possibly a Cylon welcoming committee.
Sir, did Count Rawteur suggest that our forces sit here totally defenseless?
My friend, we are on a peace mission.
In the pilot, the colonials believed a peace treaty was in the works. Instead, they discover their homeworlds have been devastated by a surprise Cylon attack, driving them into a desperate escape. Here on the left, we have Luke gazing at smoldering ruins on Tatooine. On the right, the Galactica crew surveying flaming cities on Caprica. Both use the shock of a destroyed home to heighten emotional stakes, an impactful trope but commonplace in war stories. Allegation number 10. An entire planet central to the heroes is destroyed. In Star Wars, that's Alderaan. Battlestar Galactica effectively loses all 12 colonies. Let's compare.
To make an effective demonstration, but don't worry. We will deal with your rebel friends soon enough.
Princess Leia watches in horror as Tarkin orders the Death Star's super laser to fire, annihilating her home planet. It's a pivotal scene that shows just how ruthless the Empire can be. In the opening act, the colonies are caught off guard by a massive Cylon invasion, leaving them in ruins. Like Alderaan, these worlds are central to our hero's origin, but are devastated in one massive stroke. Here, we have the Death Star's green beam tearing Alderaan apart, opposite to glimpses of widespread destruction on the colonies. Blowing up a hero's planet is a dramatic way to escalate in conflict. So, at what point does inspiration cross the line into copying? Destroying a major world to raise the stakes is a classic sci-fi move, but does it feel too close for comfort? It's visually striking, yet hardly exclusive. Allegation number 16. Romance develops between the hero's friend, the cynical pilot, and a leader's daughter. You have Han Solo and Princess Leia versus Starbuck and Athena. Both references pair the roguish pilot with a commanding leader's daughter.
Because I'm a scoundrel. There aren't enough scoundrels in your life.
I happen to like nice men.
I'm a nice man.
Very not you.
In episode 5, we see Han's teasing and Leia's reluctance give way to genuine affection. Leia, being the daughter of Alderaanian royalty, fits the leader's daughter profile.
I hurt you. Admit it.
Well,
Didn't you once tell me that I was the only woman you'd ever had any real intense feelings toward?
yeah, I am.
The pilot episode, Starbuck and Commander Adama's daughter, Athena, talk about their past romantic relationship. This is slightly different from Han and Leia, where we're able to see the beginnings of their romance. On the left, we have Han and Leia bickering in the Falcon's corridors, and on the right, Starbuck and Athena exchange smiles. The trope of pilot plus leader's daughter is a staple in adventure tales. Think about countless war films with similar romances. It's a familiar formula for building tension and drama. And if you're enjoying this deep dive, consider supporting the channel. Lawsuit documents aren't cheap, and every super thanks or membership helps fund more of these investigations. Thank you. Allegation number 4. The young hero is an idealistic fighter pilot facing his first true challenges. Luke Skywalker and Apollo are both rookie pilots tested by war. Here's how that unfolds.
Do a lot together. You okay, R2? Good.
Gold Squadron, begin takeoff procedure.
As the rebels prepare to attack the Death Star, Luke slips into an X-Wing. He's the wide-eyed farm boy turned pilot, thrown into a pivotal battle that will define his future. In this episode, Apollo ends up stranded on a frontier planet, wrestling not just with local threats, but also with his own inexperience. He's the son of Commander Adama, but he's still finding his place under immense pressure. On the left, Luke is powering up his fighter, ready to confront the Empire. And on the right, Apollo takes on responsibilities far beyond his comfort zone. Both represent that hero's journey archetype in a space setting. It's a very common motif. Allegation number 6. The hero's father was or is a leader of the democratic forces.
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father.
Often misquoted as Luke, I am your father, this scene adds layers of legacy and tragedy to Luke's path.
The patrol is under the command of Captain Apollo.
Well, if I can't have confidence in my firstborn son, whom can I depend upon?
Commander Adama spearheads humanity's fight for survival after the Cylons destroy the colonies. Apollo, being his son, gives him a direct connection to the leadership of the democratic forces. On the left, Luke grapples with his father's complicated past. On the right, Apollo conferring with his father Adama. Both heroes follow in their father's footsteps in a war for freedom, though Luke's story has a darker twist. The legacy hero is actually a long-standing narrative device. So let's continue. Allegation number 7. The leader of the democratic forces is an older man full of wisdom and symbolic leadership. From Obi-Wan Kenobi and Mon Mothma to Commander Adama, these elder figures guide the heroes with experience and moral authority.
You must learn the ways of the Force if you're to come with me to Alderaan.
In A New Hope, Obi-Wan advises Luke on how to trust the Force and navigate the corridors of the Death Star. Though not the formal leader of the rebellion, he embodies that wise elder role in Return of the Jedi.
We gather here as representatives of each ship in our fleet to answer that single question: where will we go?
In the Galactica pilot, Adama stands as the patriarch who unifies the survivors, echoing a mentor or statesman figure. He's revered for his calm leadership under crisis. On the left, we have Obi-Wan offering spiritual guidance, and on the right, Adama at the head of a council. Both instill hope in their followers, a classic archetype in adventure storytelling. I mean, nothing unusual there. Wise elders are a staple. Allegation number 8. The primary villain had once been on the good side, but turned traitor. In Star Wars, Darth Vader is the prime example. Over in Galactica, Rawteur betrays humanity. Let's break that down.
And now, Your Highness, we will discuss the location of your hidden rebel base.
We learned that Anakin Skywalker was a Jedi Knight before he fell to the dark side. Obi-Wan calls it his failure, losing a once noble hero to evil.
Oh, yes. I think as they do. I know where they will go, what they must do.
I find your reasoning logical.
At the start of Galactica's pilot, Rawteur pretends to negotiate peace, but he's actually selling out the colonies to the Cylons. It's a treacherous move by someone the Colonials initially trusted. Left side, we have Vader revealing the dark secret of his past. On the right side, Rawteur conspiring with Cylon leaders. Both men were once aligned with the good side, but turned against it. Again, a familiar twist. Ex-ally turned villain. Allegation number 11. The heroine is imprisoned by the totalitarian forces. Princess Leia versus a colonial officer in Galactica, each captured by the enemy. Let's see if this feels unique. Early on, Leia is taken prisoner aboard the Death Star. Vader questions her about the stolen plans, setting the stage for her later rescue. In this storyline, a Galactica officer is snatched by Cylons who aim to use her as bait. It's classic hostage to lure the heroes into a trap. Left, Leia being led to Darth Vader by stormtroopers. Right, Starbuck and Apollo swoop in to make a last-second rescue. Kidnapping the heroine is a staple of pulp action, dating back to early adventure series. So, nothing particularly unique here. Let's carry on. Allegation number 14. The Democratic forces attempt to free the heroine from prison. Both feature a daring rescue mission. We'll compare how each one unfolds.
517 scanner control.
Pretending to be stormtroopers escorting a prisoner, that's actually Chewbacca, they manage to get inside Leia's cell area before chaos erupts. It's a comical yet tense sequence culminating in a dramatic escape.
I guess it's a little late to try and talk to these fellas. I think so.
Meanwhile, in Galactica, Apollo and Starbuck slip past Cylon patrols and free their crewmate. The scene focuses on stealth and timing, similar to Han and Luke improvising their way to success. On the left side of your screen, we see Han and Luke blasting stormtroopers in a narrow corridor. On the right, Apollo and Starbuck evading metallic Centurions. Both are classic prison break scenarios we've seen in countless adventure tales. This is a standard rescue formula. Allegation number 18. They succeed in freeing the heroine. I mean, of course, both delivered the rescue outcome, but let's briefly compare how each one played out. In this moment, Leia quickly takes charge, grabbing a blaster and directing Luke and Han to the garbage chute. It's a lively escape, blending action and humor.
Everybody listen to me! I want everybody to move quickly and orderly towards the exits. That is an order.
Galactica's rescue is a bit more understated, but still tense. Apollo and Starbuck have to navigate laser fire from Cylons, ultimately fleeing best they can. Left, Leia firing a blaster back at pursuing stormtroopers. Right, the colonial officer hustling away from Cylons. Each show highlights the thrill of a last-second liberation. Heroes rescue the damsel in distress or a comrade. Again, very common. Allegation number 19. The totalitarian headquarters is destroyed in a final explosion. Both Star Wars and Galactica culminate in a climactic blow-up on the enemy's stronghold. Luke's proton shot triggers a chain reaction, obliterating the Death Star. It's one of the most famous fireworks in cinematic history. In the pilot, Adama's forces managed to destroy the Cylon stronghold on the planet's surface. The visuals aren't as grand as the Death Star's detonation, but the concept is the same. Knock out the enemy's primary installation. On the left, a massive spherical station engulfed in flames. On the right, an enemy fortress going up in a fiery blast. The idea of a final explosion is pretty typical for big sci-fi finales. Allegation number 24. Space vehicles, although futuristic, appear old or weathered rather than sleek. Here we explored the used future aesthetic, better known as Retrofuturism. Both opted for battered ships, not shiny new ones. George Lucas wanted the Star Wars universe to feel lived in, so ships show scorch marks and wear. In the Galactica's launch bay, you'll find Vipers that aren't exactly gleaming. They're worn from constant combat stories, echoing that same design philosophy. Used hardware in a war-weary setting. On the left, a rebel speeder with chip paint. On the right, a colonial viper scuffed and smoking. Both depart from the ultra-clean aesthetic of older sci-fi, but the notion of battle-worn tech had shown up in earlier works too. Even if Star Wars popularized it, it wasn't deemed copyrightable. The next allegation is the strongest of all the allegations. Each work opens with a written, spoken prologue emphasizing a vast galactic settings, with godlike narration. The iconic Star Wars crawl and Battlestar Galactica's solemn voiceover. The lawsuit claimed this prologue style was too similar. Few openings are as legendary. The music blares, yellow text crawls upward, and we're told about civil war in the galaxy. It instantly sets a mythic tone.
There are those who believe that life here began out there.
Galactica's pilot, a similarly grandiose introduction, welcomes viewers, suggesting that humanity's origins lie far across the cosmos. Lorne Greene's narration has that quasi-religious gravitas akin to a godlike framing. On the left, we have the instantly recognizable text scroll from A New Hope. On the right, we have a similar text scroll, but instead of on a y-axis, it's on the z-axis. Both intros set a cosmic stage and frame the conflict in grandiose terms. This was probably the strongest argument in the lawsuit. Star Wars' crawl and narration was iconic, and Galactica's lofty narration and text crawl felt similar. In total, all 34 allegations were dismissed, as the court ruled it wasn't enough for a copyright claim. So now you decide, was Battlestar Galactica writing Star Wars' coattails, or was it just another ambitious space opera? If you're interested in another side-by-side comparison guided by a lawsuit, check out the video on screen right here.